Welcome back to my channel, everybody. It's me, Megan Fox, your favorite medium smart journalist, and I am going to go over today the Trespass 5 lawsuit in the What the Hales legal disaster that is all of the lawsuits flying around Otter Creek. Now, the Trespass 5 lawsuit is one that we haven't talked about all that much because it has been going on for so long. But let's catch up on that today because there's been a lot of action in that case, and we got to catch up on it. Quick recap for those of you who don't remember the Trespass 5 case, or maybe you haven't caught up. This is a great place to kind of jump in and learn what's going on in the Otter Creek saga that involves Jeremy Hales and his neighbors, Lynette Michelle Lacey Alexis Preston and her ex-husband, John Cook. And the lawsuits between the two just keep flying. Let's just talk about Trespass 5 for now. So a lawsuit in September of 2024 was filed, not against Jeremy Hales. So a lawsuit was filed by Michelle Preston, using her name Michelle Preston, not Lynette Michelle Lacey Alexis Preston. So that's the first thing that's weird. But that was filed by her on behalf of her daughter, HG, against Therese Granger, Brett Granger, Deanna West, Rex Woods, Travis Willis, and Deputy Sheriff Gregory. Now, if you're wondering who are all these people, and Jeremy Hales is not named, that's right. He's not a defendant in this case. The people who are named are people who are friends with him, who have worked with him in the past, some of whom work with him still. I think Travis still does. And the sheriff who was at the event that this is all about. Now, what is this about? Well, it's a little difficult to understand what it's about by reading the lawsuit, but we will try. We'll go over it because what's strange about the lawsuit is that all it does is talk about that rotten Jeremy Hales instead of what is the problem that this lawsuit was actually brought for. In fact, you have to go 15 lines down before you get to anything involving any of the people named in the lawsuit. That's what's strange about it. So all of this right here, all the facts, it's complaining about Jeremy Hales. Look, here's Jeremy Hales's name and his girlfriend, George. That's her name there. Strange, they're not defendants in the case. See, you don't see Jeremy Hales here. You don't see George there, but their names are all over this complaint. And it's all about Jeremy Hales allegedly, creating this event that led to this lawsuit. So we'll read through a little bit. I'm probably not going to read the whole thing. It's 14 pages, and I do want to consolidate everything that's happened from the beginning and through what's going on today. All right, so beginning in or about the summer of 2023, non-parties, Jeremy Hales and George, fabricated a reality drama for content on their YouTube channel. This is Bruce and his, fantasy that this is what's going on here, that there's a fabricated drama that Lynette Preston has nothing to do with. That she is just an innocent bystander doing absolutely nothing, minding her own business, when Jeremy Hales just came along and decided to make her life into a drama. That's Bruce's argument. But you know what the strange thing is about this case? It was not brought by Bruce. It was not brought by Bruce. I don't like that view. This case was not brought by Bruce. He wrote this, I believe, but the lawyer who had to bring this into Levy County 8th Circuit Court is Scott Stark, who is a Florida attorney. And Scott Stark allegedly filed this with the court, but of course we don't believe that because it sounds exactly like how Bruce writes things. Okay, so let's put this back up. Let's get back to it. The theme of the What the Hales reality drama was Bad Neighbors, and it was originated based on the false premise that Miss Preston stalked us to Otter Creek by purchasing property located across from the road where Hales and George owned a property in Otter Creek. Hales and George have used Miss Preston, Mr. Cook, and 4-year-old HG Preston as fodder for content on their YouTube channel, subjecting them to, and this is the claim, harassment, bullying, stalking, defamation, invasion of privacy, blah, blah, blah. This is all about Jeremy. Number 12, all about Jeremy, about YouTube creators, all about Jeremy. Number 13, all about Jeremy, all about all about Lynette's reaction to Jeremy. 14, all of this is still about Jeremy. We still don't know what the defendants in this case did. So let's get down to 15. A major storyline in the Hales created Bad Neighbors fake reality drama has been that Miss Preston is an unfit mother to her special needs daughter, HG, whom she adopted at birth in 2019. A storyline advanced by Hales with dozens of defamatory videos portraying Miss Preston as crazy and her property as squalid and dangerous. If you are those things, though, it's not defamatory. And if your property is squalid and dangerous, then it's not defamatory. And we've seen plenty of evidence that the property is, I would say, squalid. Also, we have evidence from Northport from years ago, before Jeremy ever met Miss Preston, that there were plenty of neighbors calling CPS, very concerned about the welfare of the child. And I have spoken to some of those people, and I have put that on my channel. So it's not something he made up. This has been an ongoing concern, shall we say, with people who know Lynette Preston and are familiar with the adoption and all of that. As a result, the Save HG storyline, that what the Hales fans have made they've made false child abuse reports. Again, this is still not about the defendants. Where are the defendants? I'm still looking. He's talking about Veteran Nation here, another YouTube channel who's not named in the complaint, but is complaining about him for some reason because he called CPS because he was concerned about what he saw on a video. Here we go. Finally, line 17, we get to the crux of this lawsuit and what happened to cause it. Lloyd Campbell lived in his RV on Miss Preston's property from March to August 2024, pursuant to an agreement for Miss Preston to purchase his RV for $7,000 with $500. This is all disputed, by the way. Lloyd says that never happened. And text messages prove he kept telling her no, he didn't want to sell the camper. So this is not true. Blah, blah, blah. So he's just trying to say that that was supposed to be Lynette's camper. In June, Campbell fell in his RV and broke his hip. And they claim while drunk. We don't know if that's true or not. He says it's not. After providing alcohol to 3 teenagers, another thing that he says is not true, resulting in a lengthy stay in a rehabilitation center and absence from Miss Preston's property. While recovering in a rehab facility, Mr. Campbell was induced by Hales and George, again, still not mentioning the defendants, during a recorded phone call broadcast on What the Hales YouTube channel to claim to be in fear for his life from Miss Preston, so that Mr. Hales offered to send a crew of his people to retrieve Campbell's RV and other belongings from Miss Preston's property in exchange for Campbell agreeing to file a false elder abuse report against Miss Preston. No, there was no exchange. That video is online for everyone to see. You can see that. He asked him if he was going to file a complaint because all of these things he was saying were very concerning, and he should file a complaint based on the things he was saying she was doing. Instead of leaving the RV in accordance with his contract with Miss Preston, which he did not have, by the way, there's no contract, no written contract, Campbell arranged with Hales to rescue the RV and his other possessions from Miss Preston's property. A pretext orchestrated by Hales. Again, Hales is not named in this lawsuit. I know I have to keep saying that, but why are we talking about Hales? To have his people gain entry to Preston's property. On Sunday, August 12th, while Miss Preston was at home on her property with her 4-year-old daughter, defendant Levy County Deputy Sheriff Gregory arrived unannounced, accompanied by defendants Willis, Granger, Woods, and West, and informed Miss Preston that they were there to retrieve the RV and other property supposedly belonging to Campbell. Now, you should remember this because you've seen the footage. Let me play some of it. Here is that footage.
It's a Bosch. Bosch.
Table saw or circular saw? A radio phone saw. A radio home saw. Built into the table. Lloyd is here, right. And I can verify. So make sure Lloyd brings his identification. Because I.
Two or three totes.
All right, you guys remember that footage. And by the way, I would call that property squalid. And dangerous for a toddler. Yes, that's my opinion. I'm allowed to have it. I saw footage of it, and you saw footage of it, and lots of us believe that that's squalid, a squalid, dirty place, and it's not a safe place, especially for a medically fragile toddler. Of course, we have no verification that she is medically fragile. We don't even know if that is true. That's just something that Lynette Preston has claimed in multiple Facebook pages trying to raise money on it. So we don't know if that's true or not. All right, let's get back to the lawsuit. So they did take out all of Lloyd's things and the camper, except for the refrigerator, which she claimed was hers. All right, they're claiming here, she claims in her lawsuit that Miss Preston was terrified and that HG was terrified. Of course, the only person HG should have been terrified by that day was Lynette, who tried to lock her by herself in the camper, and the police officer had to stop her from doing it. Do you remember that? Let's actually find that.
There's some clear coats with blue handles on the black shelves and a Stanley toolbox on the floor.
Miss Lynette. Let's not lock the door with her by herself. Let's not lock the door by herself.
They're not filming my child.
Okay, but do not lock the door with her by herself.
Okay.
If they're going to go, if
Go
they're not
sit
going to
down.
go in there, do not
Go
lock that
sit
door.
down. Go sit down.
All right, so we all witnessed her trying to lock the child in a camper with no one else there, and having to be told by the police officer, no, Lynette, you are not to lock her in there. Do not do that. Do not lock her in there with no one in there. And now we know, because of police reports and pictures and photographs, that in that camper, in John's camper, were loaded weapons within her reach. And so what are they trying to say? We're not allowed to say that's a dangerous environment for a child. We're not allowed to see what we see, use our eyes and our brains and say, hey, you know what? This is a dangerous place for a child. Yeah, we are. We are allowed to do that. And you can't sue people for saying the obvious, okay? Because it's an opinion. It's a protected opinion, and I'm allowed to have it. You know, back when I homeschooled my kids, there were people, critics of mine, you know, because I hated my politics, who would say that my homeschooling my children wasn't good for my children. And that was their opinion. They were allowed to have it. I couldn't go sue them for saying that me homeschooling is good for my children, and they lied and they said terrible things about me. No, that's a protected opinion. You're allowed to have a negative opinion of someone, especially if you can point to instances that prove you right. Like the fact that she was trying to lock her child, a 4-year-old, in an unattended camper with loaded firearms within reach of the toddler. And we've seen those police photographs. So that is the thing. All right. Hales allegedly, so he orchestrated this invasion, says the lawsuit, with the assistance of defendant Gregory, the sheriff, but which, of course, who they called to make sure that they did everything correctly and that no laws were being violated, and so that they had a witness. Now comes the defendants here. Finally, in line 24, we finally get mention of them. With the assistance of defendant Gregory, to ensure Miss Preston could not interfere with the invasion of her property, defendants Willis, Granger, West, and Woods proceeded to take anything they claimed belonged to Campbell, with no opportunity for Miss Preston to discuss the RV or any other items with Campbell. But she did. She did. She took the refrigerator, Lloyd's refrigerator, that he said was his. She said, no, it's not. It's mine. And the police officer said, well, if there's a dispute, it stays with Miss Preston and he can take it up in court. So that's all on video. So she did have opportunity, and she did not try to claim that the RV was hers. Hales chose defendants, blah, blah, blah. So this goes on and on. Okay. So this lawsuit happened because they went to Lloyd's stuff and got his stuff and took it off her property. Then she turns around and she sues all the people who helped Lloyd for unlawful invasion, claiming that because the footage was shown on YouTube, that somehow it was part of a fake reality show. And this was filed back in September. Now, the first thing that happened was that the Grudge judge was assigned to it. Judge Grudge was assigned to it. So the Grangers they filed a motion to disqualify the circuit court judge, Judge Craig DeThomasis, for bias because he had already been found to be biased towards Lynette Preston in Jeremy Hales's case, and he stepped off the case. So this was a win for the Grangers. He had to step off the case. We don't need to read that through. Now what has happened? Oh, I forgot to pull this up. Hold on. Hold, please. I got it. All right, so this just went in, I think last week or a couple days ago. Amended notice of voluntary dismissal. The plaintiff hereby gives notice of voluntary dismissal of this action without prejudice pursuant to Florida Rule of Civil Procedure. But on his What the Hales media ecosystem podcasts, they are bragging that what they are going to do is dismiss these cases here and bring them in another venue. So this is not done by any stretch of the imagination, according to Bruce and his minions, his I don't know what to call them. The crampons. According to the crampons. That's what's happening. But a monkey wrench was thrown into the mix with this new lawsuit filed today. Now comes Therese Granger and Brett Granger versus Michelle Preston. Complaint for malicious prosecution. Now, this is a new lawsuit. This is not in the Trespass 5 case, but it does relate to it. Complaint for malicious prosecution. Therese Granger and Brett Granger hereby sue defendant Michelle Preston and allege this complaint seeks damages in excess of $50,000 exclusive of attorney's fees and costs. Venue is appropriate in Levy County because the causes of action giving rise to the complaint were accrued in Levy County. Defendant Preston is a resident of Gilchrist County, Florida, and as such is sui juris. I don't know what that means, and I don't care right now. On or about general allegations. On or about September 18th, Preston filed a lawsuit alleging that plaintiffs committed wrongful acts sounding in tort and sought damages for intentional infliction of emotional distress, invasion of privacy, conversion, invasion of privacy, publication of private information, civil conspiracy, economic damages, exemplary damages, punitive damages, costs and attorney's fees in Gilchrist County Circuit Court. The proceedings commenced by Preston against plaintiffs originated solely with her actions. As such, these actions constitute the legal causation of the proceedings that were commenced against the plaintiffs. A dismissal was filed with respect to the proceedings. This result represents a bona fide termination of the proceedings brought by Preston's actions that was in favor of plaintiffs. At no time material to this matter was there probable cause for the proceedings. In commencing the proceedings, Preston acted with malice against plaintiffs. As a result of the foregoing, plaintiffs suffered damages, wherefore they demand judgment against Preston for damages suffered in the amount of $55,000 plus prejudgment interest, costs of suit, and such other relief this court deems just and proper. This is also being demanded for a jury trial. They want a jury trial. And that was submitted today by the Shockit Law Group. This is very interesting to me. So in the other case that was brought in the Levy County Circuit Court, the 8th Judicial Circuit, was the thumbnail case, which they also dismissed voluntarily, claiming to want to bring it in some other action, in some other thing. But we all know that it sure seems vexatious. It sure seems like this is just meant to run up the bills, cost these people a lot of money, and that when they don't intend to actually show up for their depositions, they don't show the evidence that they claim they had. In fact, in the trespass case, right before this was dismissed, Lynette was scheduled for a deposition, which she didn't show up for. So And then they dismiss the whole thing. So it's like when you ask them to show their cards, right? Put your cards on the table, tell me what you have, show me what damages were done to you, where's your evidence? They run away, they dismiss the case, and they say they're going to file it someplace else. This cannot be legal. This cannot be legal. This is harassment by legal filing. And it's interesting. So the Grangers have filed this new lawsuit to address that. And it is a malicious prosecution claim. Now, in the other one, in the thumbnail lawsuit, that one is still scheduled for a sanctions hearing. So they gave them safe harbor period to dismiss within 21 days in that case, and they didn't. And because of that, they are allowed to do what's the sanctions hearing, which is easier than filing a new lawsuit. In this case, they dismissed it before there was a safe harbor issue, or during the safe harbor period. And so a sanctions hearing on this one in the trespass case is not an option. You have to file a new case for malicious prosecution, which is exactly what the Grangers have done. And I think this is turning into one of the most interesting legal battles of this entire doings. The Trespass 5 case, to me, is the most interesting one of all, because I think it shows that this was to harass and annoy and cause people to spend money, all for revenge. And what's interesting about the Trespass 5 case is that they had no grounds to file it. Lloyd was by all intents and purposes and by definition of the law, Lloyd Campbell was a resident on Lynette's property as a renter. He was a renter, renting. So he had rights. In Florida, you have rights as a renter, which means you can invite anyone to come on that property, your friends. So he could invite Travis, and he could invite them with cameras. This all now becomes tenant law, landlord and tenant law. And Lynette has no right to keep Lloyd from having his friends or family or anyone come to get his things and take them off the property. She has no right. And she didn't have a right in the beginning to even complain about this. I mean, she could complain about it, but I mean, to file a case, there's no law that I know of that actually backs her up in this. There's no law that says people are a tenant of yours is trespassing on your property because they sent some family members to pick up their things sitting on your property because they're renting it from you. And whether she had a formal contract with him or not, the law in Florida says that if you stay in a place, I think it's longer than 3 weeks, you are officially a tenant. So be careful of that when you ask people in Florida to stay with you for long periods of time, because they can get tenants' rights. So that is the update in the Trespass 5 case. So I hope you got completely caught up today on everything going on in the Trespass 5 case, because that's everything you need to know. So even if you hadn't been following this from the beginning, you should be able to follow the Trespass 5 case now. And I, for one, am looking forward to what happens next. I think this was a good move to file for malicious prosecution. It sure seems malicious to me. It sure seems like the intent was to harass and not really because there were no legal grounds to do this. But I guess it remains to be seen. New stuff happens every day. Every day in this case, new things happen, and you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. So stay tuned.